For those who are joining us, we are just going to wait another minute or so to let people into the room. So bear with us. Okay. I think we can get started. We also want to be mindful of everybody's time. So welcome everyone to our webinar for busy lawyers series entitled Change is Hard. Changing Habits is Harder. Effective Strategies for Changing and Maintaining Habits, presented by Dr. Shawn Healy. And I'm going to introduce him momentarily. I'm Amy Levine, Director of Programs and Volunteers at Lawyers Concern for Lawyers, and I will be your host for today. If you're joining us for the first time, Lawyers Concern for Lawyers provides a range of confidential and free services to support the legal community's well-being, including one-on-one consultations with licensed clinicians for mental health and substance use disorders, support groups including recovery groups, educational programs like this one today, including customized programs for individual organizations, and finally, one-on-one consultations with our law practice advisor on law firm practice management and professionalism. A housekeeping note, we love and encourage questions, so please use either the chat or the Q&A functions for those questions, and we'll get to those at the end of the program. And now I am very honored to introduce Dr. Healy. He is the Director of Administrative Operations and is a clinical psychologist providing clinical services to LCL clients, including individual consultations and facilitating support groups. He publishes and presents on all matters of mental health topics germane to the legal community. He's also a certified trainer in mental health first aid and serves as the co-chair on the Massachusetts Bar Association's Lawyer Wellbeing Committee. He joined LCL over 10 years ago, following his work in private practice, and received his doctorate in clinical psychology from Suffolk University. Finally, he co-authored the book, The Full Weight of the Law, How Legal Professionals Can Recognize and Rebound from Depression, with another LCL clinical psychologist, Dr. Jeff Forking. And now I am ready to hand it over to Shawn.
Thank you, Amy, and welcome everyone. I will, per usual, share my screen so you can gaze upon some beautiful slides and be impressed by my slide making abilities. So we're here today to talk about habit changes and maintaining habits. As most of you probably know, maintaining habits and starting habits and maintaining them is one of the most difficult things to do. There are multiple billion-dollar plus industries out there designed specifically to help people do this or to sort of monetize people's efforts to start habits, to maintain them. And so I'm going to share some thoughts about what it is that is helpful. This is not an endorsement of any of those services, and it's also not a critique of them either. I want to start with the age-old question of kind of like, why do we continue habits that don't serve us if we know better, so to speak, right? So if I know what I should do, like why am I continuing to do this thing that doesn't serve me? And so this question can oftentimes elicit some bad feelings, some shame, some guilt, some self-criticism, because I'm trying to do better, but I'm not able to accomplish certain things. And it should be simple, right? If I know what it is that's good for me, why don't I do that? Why don't I maintain that? So the quick answer, the oversimplified answer, is that our habits do serve us in some way. And this is really helpful to be aware of. Um, any bad habit has some benefits to it. And so when I'm trying to change a habit or start a new habit that am interested in, a positive change, if I'm just focused on what I want this new habit to do, but I'm not aware of what my old habit was providing for me, then oftentimes I'm going to sort of miss out on an effective way to start a new habit. So just to sort of unpack this a little bit more, every habit, and, and it might be helpful to think of a habit as just a pattern, right? We often use that word habit to denote something negative or not healthy or something that needs to be changed. But in reality, a habit is just a pattern. All right. So we could have habits that are positive or habits that have positive effects. We can have habits that largely show us some negative effects. And we have lots of habits that are just neutral. And in fact, every habit or pattern has all of those things. So it's not like, I need to identify things in the category of positive habits and just do those things. The fact is, all of our patterns, all of our habits have all of these things. They have benefits or positive effects, they have negative consequences or negative effects, and they have neutral effects. Oftentimes, we're not aware of those neutral effects because we don't pay much attention to them. What grabs our attention are the negative consequences or the negative effects and the positive effects or the benefits. And so if we're able to look at a pattern or a habit that we want to change, we've identified it as maladaptive, unhealthy, I don't want to continue this pattern, we need to be able to recognize the positive effects of that pattern. Because ideally what we want to do is start something different, a new pattern that takes away some of the negative effects of that old pattern, but hopefully continues the positive effects of it. So I'll tease that apart in a little bit. Um, one thing to keep in mind is that it's really helpful to know yourself, right? To spend some time with yourself. If you haven't done this already, you should spend some time with yourself, get to know yourself a little bit more. Specifically, in terms of habit formation, think about those habits that you have started and maintained over time that are just easier for you to maintain versus those that are more challenging. And again, our attention is drawn to those that are more challenging that we haven't been able to do or we feel bad about. But if we look back at our life in the past or our life currently, and we just look for patterns, we can identify things that we've been able to start and maintain, actually a lot of things. And so the more that we're able to identify a habit or a pattern that we've been able to maintain, and then think about which ones are easier for me to maintain and which ones are more challenging. And then once I'm able to distinguish those, I can start to pick apart, like, what is it about this challenging habit that makes it hard for me to start it or maintain it versus something that has been easier for me to maintain, whether that is healthy eating, exercise, sobriety, regular billing practices, organizational practices in your work, returning client calls or renewing files, anything in terms of a pattern, whether it's work related, personally related, that's helpful to have that sense of, where do I struggle and where do I thrive? All right. And then going a bit deeper than that, asking yourself, like, what is it that has allowed me to succeed in these particular patterns or habits that I've been able to maintain? So knowing yourself could look um, like what is helpful for me that may or may not be helpful for somebody else. One of the challenges of starting new habits and maintaining them is if you do any sort of Google search or ask AI to do it for you, you'll come up with a whole bunch of different ideas, like strategies, programs, these different things that other people have used to help them, start or maintain a habit. It's great to have examples of what has worked for other people, just to have options. But really, the most important thing is to know for yourself what has helped you and also what your particular barriers have been to starting and maintaining a new habit. Another distinction to point out is we have patterns or habits that are visible, and we have those that are invisible. And oftentimes, it's easier to focus on those visible habits, right? Like, am I exercising? Am I eating well? Am I keeping up with, communications with my loved ones? Do I have hobbies? Those sort of things that I can see and other people can see are usually what I focus on when I think about my habits. But then when I take a step back and I think about what sort of invisible patterns or habits are helping me or not helping me, things like, self-criticism, negative thought patterns, right? Perfectionism, those sort of things, I could just hold on to those internally and not let anybody else know. But those might be habits that I could benefit from changing. And so it's, again, just helpful to have a sense of what habits are visible that I want to change, but also invisible. And what you need for each one of those might differ, again, based on what's helpful to you, based on the particular habit or pattern, and also based on what has worked for you in the past and what struggles are particularly true for you. Some common barriers to change are, this is not an exhaustive list, just to list a few common ones. One is perfectionism. When we have the sense that I know what I want to do, and my goal is an idealized version of myself or a perfect idea of what it is I want to achieve, that can actually stand in our way when we're thinking, if I don't do it perfectly, if I'm trying to exercise 5 days a week and I miss a day, well, now I've failed. I'm unable to maintain this perfect habit. If my expectation is not realistic or helpful to me, then I'm setting myself up to feel shame and failure and guilt, and then stop or totally avoid the habit altogether. Um, Sort of related to this is the idea of inertia or lack of motivation. We often feel like, or we think that in order to make a lasting change, we need to feel motivated to do it. And motivation is often a positive feeling that gets us to act or do something different, but it's short-lived, right? That sense of motivation or excitement or optimism doesn't last. And the reason why it doesn't last is because in order to maintain a habit over time, you have to be um, sort of engaged in somewhat of a boring routine, right? And that boredom, or what's required to maintain something over time, just lacks that pizzazz of, that initial motivation, that initial excitement to make a change. And so I want to talk about the stages of change and how it's helpful to recognize where you are in those different stages and what's needed in those different stages. So again, one of the barriers is if I feel like, I'm really motivated right now, that motivation isn't going to last. And therefore, how do I maintain this change? Or if I'm just not feeling that motivation right now, if I'm feeling inertia, if I'm feeling like I'm not excited about it, how do I get myself moving to even start this thing? Another barrier is that fear of failure, kind of related to that perfectionism. Like if I try, particularly with a visible habit, if I try and other people are seeing me try and I don't succeed, right, that feels bad, right? I don't want to sort of display my failure to the world. And sometimes, even if it's not something you're showing other people, your efforts, just sort of internally knowing that I'm not able to sort of start or continue this new pattern, that fear of failure can be a huge barrier. Um, and then also misunderstanding of how you change a habit, right? For some people, like the idea is, I just need to want it bad enough, and then I'm going to start it, and it's gonna last. I just need to start, and that's it. Or like many people often ask me, like, how long does it take to establish a new habit? Is it 21 days? Is it, 30 days? And sometimes the idea is if I just make it to that point, then after that point, I don't have to try as much because I've established the habit, whatever it is, and now it's on autopilot. I think that is a very common misunderstanding where the habits that we want to start and maintain, they do take effort, even after you've been doing them for, whatever period of time some expert has told you you need in order to establish a habit. So the the energy needed to maintain a habit often looks different than the energy needed to start a habit. But what doesn't happen, in my experience, is that once you hit a certain point, the effort is no longer required. There's always effort required. And so you can have a sense that, it's taking more effort at first, which is understandable, and the effort that it takes to maintain looks different. You might need something different, but there's always going to be effort needed. So I mentioned the stages of change. This is helpful in terms of like knowing where you are in this process. So first is the pre-contemplation stage. That is, I'm not even thinking about making a change that might be beneficial to me. It's like not on my radar. It's like, nope, it's not a priority of mine. Maybe somebody else points it out to me. So it's like, hey, have you ever thought about blah, blah, blah? And so once it's on my radar and I'm interested or in considering changing, then I'm in the contemplation change. I'm thinking about it. I might, be considering, is it worth my time? Is it even possible? Is this a priority of mine? Is this important to me? Does it really affect anything? And then after contemplation, I move into the preparation stage, which is I'm trying to make a plan to go from where I am to where I want to be, right? From my old habit to a new habit. So I'm planning what it is that I might need, what it's going to look like for me to start a new habit. And then after I have some amount of preparation, and that might also involve like identifying supports, identifying barriers and how I'm going to get over those barriers, things like that. Next is the action phase. And this is the phase where most people experience the highest level of support, right? Particularly if it's a visible habit, right? Other people are seeing you make this change. They're seeing you do the thing and like, oh, maybe that's where the encouragement comes in. That's where a lot of support comes in. And you might feel the most excited during the action phase. It's like, all right, I'm actually doing it. I'm taking the steps that I wanted to take. And then after that action phase, it ranges per situation and people. After that action phase is the maintenance phase. It's like I've made some level of change towards the ultimate goal that I want to achieve, and now I just need to continue it. And the maintenance stage is often the hardest stage because the sort of excitement dies down. Sometimes the social support and encouragement dies down, right? And some people can start to see this as your new baseline. It's like, oh yeah, you do this thing now, but it doesn't feel that way to you necessarily. It might feel like, no, I'm trying really hard every day still. And like, when is it going to be easier? And so in the maintenance phase, it's really important to plan for this. It's important to assess regularly, what is it that I need during my maintenance phase, right? Do I need that added encouragement? Do I need something different? Do I need accountability? Do I need partnership? Right? What is it that I need going forward? And it's okay to need different things as time goes on. It's just really important to be aware for yourself and assess, your situation. What is it that I need to maintain? And it's okay that those things change. Another normal part of the stages of change is termination or relapse. This is when, like, I was doing good, and then all of a sudden I fell off my habit, right? Sometimes that's for sobriety, it might be a relapse. For, my workout plan, it's like, oh, I took too many days off. All right, I was on vacation, I got out of my routine, right? But whatever it is, termination, either stopping the habit or a temporary or short-term sort of reversal to or a return to the old habit. It's a normal part of the stages of change. So it's helpful to plan for these, right? So if you get to a point where a termination happens, it's like I was doing so well, I was really sticking to my plan to read every day, and then I got caught up with work, and my reading time got put on hold, and now it's been months since I've read a fun book, or I started an LLM program, and all of a sudden my schedule got really busy, and now I've not been able to get to the gym in a while, right? So I feel like I'm out of practice or out of my routine. And in those periods, it can feel like all of my efforts are lost because I had this track record going and now it's gone. But if you think about termination and relapse as a normal stage of change, and you plan for it, and you sort of assess what you need to get back to uh, that habit that you've previously maintained, then you can respond to relapse or termination in a positive way to get back to the thing that you're trying to maintain. And so, again, it's not inevitable that a habit will terminate or relapse, but it's often very common. So being prepared for that is important. So specifically, there are challenges to each of these phases. Don't need to go into huge detail here, but with pre-contemplation, it's a lack of awareness. It's like I'm not even thinking about making this change. That's not on my radar, right? That's a challenge. So you kind of need some external, reminder or message from somebody or a light bulb moment to kind of like, hey, this is something to pay attention to. In the contemplation phase, it's often that ambivalence. I'm thinking about it, but I don't even know if it's possible. I'm concerned about failure. I'm concerned that I don't have the time or resources to do it. In the preparation phase, sometimes we're bogged down by how you actually, get this thing moving. Am I battling unrealistic expectations? Am I expecting perfection out of myself? Right? Am I basically loading up shame in that, I know what I should do, but I haven't been doing it. And therefore, there's a big gap there. And that's sort of getting in the way of my preparation. Things like lack of support, right? So if you don't feel like you have what you need available to you, that can be a barrier in the preparation. For action, again, we've talked about inertia already, but like feeling that lack of motivation or inertia is the thing that gets in the way of action, right? Not being prepared for setbacks. Um, for some, the thing in the action phase can be like, I don't want to start with a little goal or a little step. I want to make a big change. I want to totally change things completely. For some habits, that's an appropriate thing to do, a significant change, because the habit is significantly unhealthy. For other habits, actually making a less exciting change is a better plan. So taking steps, each step from where you are that is maintainable, that you can persist on, right? That's a better strategy for certain habits. And then for maintenance, the barriers there are, again, that decreasing support and motivation, like the excitement goes away. You're feeling like you're doing more of this by yourself if you haven't set up those support systems. Relapse prevention is an important thing here. However, again, I can feel like I'm putting in a lot of effort and I'm not seeing as much change now because when I went from inaction to action, that was a lot of change. But now maintaining that action over time, there's a little bit of change. And so I can feel sort of deflated or discouraged, or I can miss how much change is actually happening. So I'm going to get to that actually in a second. And then for termination and relapse, again, those barriers are shame, perfectionism, and just misunderstanding that this is a part of the process of change. So moving from intention to action, here are some helpful things. One is to clearly define your new habit. So will you know when you achieved it, right? If it's if it's clearly defined, as opposed to like, I want to be healthy. Well, what does that mean? If I was truly healthy, would I even know I got there? Right? Am I able to maintain steps towards that end goal? Not the end goal itself, but can I maintain the steps that I want to take? Or am I making my steps too lofty, right? So if I want to change everything about my diet and my exercise routine on day one, I'm not going to be able to sustain that long term. So what am I going to be able to sustain? So breaking it down, making sure it's manageable and maintainable. So focusing on the maintenance is the key to establishing a long-term habit, not focusing solely on the end goal. Also knowing what helps, right? For you, is it encouragement? Is it doing it with other people? Is it having those people in person versus just having a voice, a text, an email, a phone call, right? Do rewards help you? Does competition help you, right? People are very different in terms of what is helpful to them. So tap into what's helpful to you. Also, concrete reminders of what the benefits of the new habit might be in the future. So what I mean by this is remind yourself why you're doing this. What is it that you want to get out of this new habit? All right. So if it's, being physically fit, you're not going to see that for a while, even though you're putting a lot of effort into this habit. You're working out or you're exercising regularly. You're not just all of a sudden going to wake up and be a chiseled new person. So reminding yourself, what is it that is my motivation or my reason for doing this habit? And try to bring that into your current awareness. Like, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing it. It's hard. I'm not seeing these big changes day to day, but the reason I'm doing it is this. I mentioned this a little bit, but plan for barriers, right? So what's likely to stand in your way? And then also address or compensate for those benefits of the old habit. Because one of the things that happens is when I'm trying to change a habit into something new, I have an old habit, I want to change into a new habit. The draw of that old habit is going to sort of pull me back because there's benefits there. And if I don't address those in this new habit, I'm making it harder for myself. So the more that I can bring those benefits to this new habit, then it's going to be more motivating. It's going to be more rewarding for this new habit because I'm not going to say goodbye to everything from my old habit. Because again, there's some benefits to that old habit. There's also some neutral stuff. So bringing that into the new habit is really helpful. In terms of action steps, again, identify the habit you want to change or the one that you want to create if it's a brand new habit. Recognize the benefits of that unhelpful habit and bring it into the new habit the best that you can. You might have to sort of compensate for something else. This new habit might not encompass everything. So you might have to be creative at making sure that those needs that you're getting met with the old habit are met in some other way. Making a specific and sustainable plan is really important. A lot of the industry out there in terms of, exercise programs, diet programs, the draw is that, oh, you're going to see, rapid increases in your strength. You're going to experience these huge benefits in, such a quick amount of time. That's the pull, right? That's how they get your money. That's how they sort of draw you in. And that's also how they keep the industry going. Because well, I did say this wasn't a critique, but I guess this is a critique. This is how they keep their industry going, is they promise big things, they get you motivated, you try it, it lasts for a little while, you fail, and then they bring you back. The most effective thing is not exciting. The most effective thing is kind of boring. It's making sustainable steps over time and just sticking to it. So the more that you can do that, the more successful you're going to be. Other helpful action steps are schedule the start of your habit. Don't just have a amorphous idea like I'm going to start it soon, right? But have a specific start date. Tell somebody about your plan. So it's not just you maintaining this idea and this plan, but get support from other people. And have a way of noticing your progress, whether that is just charting my consistency or in some way sort of operationalizing my habit. That way I can look at it and see the progress as opposed to only thinking the progress is at the end. Other things are plan for those setbacks and struggles and triggers, right? Focus on persistence not perfection, right? The fact that you can get up again after you get knocked down, that's more important than never getting knocked down. And also, sort of back to my earlier critique, beware of that temptation for a quick result or a sprint to the change. Recognize that most of us all have that desire for a quick change or like big results. It's a natural thing that we want. When you recognize it and you can put it on hold, then you can sort of have a better plan. But when you're not aware of that, you'll get sort of drawn into those plans that aren't going to be very helpful. Also, reverse engineer a habit, right? Sometimes it's helpful to think, if this habit was already in place, what would it look like for me? What would have to be true for me to maintain this new habit? And then work backwards from there. I mentioned, there's lots of different rules. You Google, habit formation, and you'll get lots of different rules about like how long it takes and things like that, and helpful things. There's nothing, um, there's no perfect way of starting a habit, right? Or maintaining a habit. So whether it's, one of these things where like, focus on it for 21 days and then, another 90 days to make it permanent. These plans can be helpful if you use them properly. And what I mean by that is if the idea of starting something hard is overwhelming, sometimes it's helpful to just focus on the first chunk of time, right? And so if I tell myself, I don't know if I can work out 5 days a week for the rest of my life, that just seems overwhelming. But if I tell myself, I'm going to try working out for X number of days a week for a certain amount of time, now it's finite. And now I feel like I can manage a finite amount of time, right? I can marshal my resources. I can try this thing with my plan, with my supports. I can try it for a chunk of time. Now, that chunk of time helps me get started. But if I'm going to use this in an effective way, I think of this as the start, not the finish. It's unhelpful when I think of this as like once I get to the end of that time, then it's set it and forget it. Then I don't have to try anymore. That's usually when people, you know, aren't able to maintain and they stop the habit. But if you see these multitude of recommendations as like this is just how you start, and then you need something different to maintain, that's when you're really going to be able to benefit from something like this to then launch you and then maintain over time. That was a lot of information really quickly. So my apologies. And by all means, this is not the end all be all of what to say on this topic. But hopefully this is enough to sort of get you thinking uh, about what would be helpful for you.
Well, Shawn, as always, it was wonderful and lots to think about. One of the there were a few takeaways that I had on this, but a lot of it is self-reflection. And it is thinking about, as you mentioned, what is beneficial in this habit that maybe is not so healthful, and thinking about that, and then thinking about, again, what is going to be beneficial if we do something else. So that struck me. I also know with lawyers, there's a lot of perfectionism in there. And so I think that that could be a big reason. I think there are numerous reasons, but again, that whatever we're going to do or change has to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And again, thinking about, okay, all of a sudden I'm going to have that chiseled body, and that's the only thing that, is going to be satisfactory. So that's the perfection. And again, that goes back to the all or nothing. There are smaller actionable steps involved. And again, having concrete reminders of the benefits of that new habit.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I thought all of that information was really helpful. And again, these were some of the highlights that I took away from it. So I do want to open it up to questions. I'll share a quick story while we're waiting. My doctor, confidentially, even though we're being recorded, I don't do a lot of activity. And my joke was always, well, I walk my pug. And by the way, my pug walks 2 feet and sniffs somewhere. So the walking really isn't that active. But my doctor said to me, okay, 5 days a week, you need to get on the treadmill for 30 minutes. And I thought to myself, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen. And so I haven't even done anything. Um, but anyway, so those are my quick thoughts on. You would also think a medical doctor might have a different take on it. Let's start a little slower. Um, Again, somebody says, thank you for the presentation, very motivating. This person has chosen one pattern in their life and will address it using the steps that you have suggested. So thank you.
I think
Um,
that's just to interject there.
yeah, no, please.
That's a really important point is that I don't think I mentioned at all, but I had intended to, which is particularly when you feel like there's so many things I would like to change about myself and my routine, it could be overwhelming. And so one of the helpful things to do is to consciously say, I'm not going to start these new helpful routines. I'm going to focus on one, right? So I don't have to do everything. It doesn't have to be perfect, and I don't have to address everything right now. But starting with one can be really helpful because you're focusing your attention and your resources on that one thing. The other thing to your point, Amy, your story is like if you're already doing something and you feel like, oh, I'm doing something, but it's not adequate, or your doctor tells you need to do more. My strong recommendation is to just build off of what you're already doing. So if you're walking your pug 7 steps every day or 5 days a week, whatever, try walking your pug, a few more steps. If your pug says, no, I'm not walking, like pick up your pug and step yourself, a few more steps. Just build off of what you're already doing because that is much easier to do than starting a brand new routine that requires completely different, you know, equipment or reminders or things like that. So if you've got something already established, it's much easier to build from it than to sort of create the wheel anew.
That's a really good point. And by the way, yes, my pug is very stubborn. So when she decides she's not walking anymore, I do pick her up. It's an additional 20 pounds of quick walking. So I appreciate that. I just want to address something really quickly. Yes, PowerPoint will be sent to you shortly after the presentation, along with the presentation. So, yes, you will receive that. Um, Somebody asked if you could show the second to last slide again about maintaining habits. We can do that shortly. And what somebody does ask, what about when the change or new habit is part of a larger goal and the habit is not helping?
That's a good question. So I just pulled up the slide. I'm not sure if this is the one that they're referring to in terms of the multitude of recommendations. And the action steps before that. But anyway, yeah, the slides will be available. So don't feel like you need to jot all this down or take pictures. You'll have access to them later. Yeah, so in terms of a new habit that's part of a larger goal and the habit is not helping. Um, yeah, I would say sometimes um, if the new habit, if I'm understanding correctly, so the new habit is getting you to a larger goal, but you've established this new habit, but you're not getting closer to that goal. If that's the the framing, I would evaluate if the new habit is providing some benefit to you, right? So is it that the larger goal is like too out of reach? Is it unrealistic? Is it an idealized version of something? And in fact, the habit itself is helpful, but it's never going to get you to that end goal because nothing will. So if I, want to reverse the aging process by exercising, well, exercising will improve my physical health and strength, but it's never going to reverse the aging process. Right. So if that's the situation, then it might be helpful to change the larger goal.
Mm.
If it's the situation where the larger goal is achievable, but this habit that I've formed just isn't getting me closer to it, well, then it might be a question of, do I need to redirect my attention towards a different habit that is actually going to get me closer to that goal. So, for example, if my larger goal is to build community around me, I move to a new place, I want to feel connected, and the habit that I maintained or started was, going to the gym. I'm hoping that this habit will help me build community, but this particular gym doesn't really have a sense of community.
Mm.
Um, Therefore, like what I'm trying to do isn't getting me to my larger goal, but it's providing some benefits, right? So I'm feeling healthier, but I'm not building community. So you have options. In that scenario, one is just to maintain that helpful habit because I'm getting some benefit from it, but reevaluate what would get me closer to my larger goal. Another is to sort of make a new plan, right? If I'm limited with my time and energy, and I really need this new habit to not only, benefit me physically, but I also need it to build community because this is my one outlet, my one opportunity, then maybe I want to think creatively about how to do it differently.
Mm.
Um, so those are just some brief thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that. And what's interesting is you can change, right? As you just said, if something's not working for you or working is what you wanted it to be, you can change it
Hmm.
and approach it differently. So I think that was a really good point. Sometimes we feel like, oh, this was the plan, can't veer from it.
Hmm.
Somebody wanted you to comment on the perfectionism piece, anecdotes, try to enjoy the activity. Um, so
Yeah.
again, perfectionism antidotes and try to enjoy the activity.
Yeah. So that's that's a great question. So trying to enjoy the activity is a great idea. Um, so if, for example, if your goal was to establish a, exercise routine, you know, starting with things that you like to do, that you would enjoy, like dancing or, flying a kite, like being outside and moving your body in some way is a really good way to start because, like, again, you're building off of something you already have. I already have an interest in this. I enjoy this activity. I'm just going to start doing it separate from the goal of, benefiting in some other way. So that's why, oftentimes the recommendation for adults in particular is try to exercise for fun, right? If you hate running, but you think, oh, I have to run because that's the best way to get in shape, don't run. Do something else. Like if you hate the activity, again, you might be able to maintain that for a little while, but like life's short. You should enjoy stuff. There's lots of options for physical activity or other things as well. So if you can find something that you actually enjoy, like two birds with one stone there. The other thing is, um, yeah, in terms of perfectionism, I often encourage people to try some activity that they're guaranteed to fail at. Because just to like get used to that idea that, I can do this thing and suck at it, right?
Mm.
Like start something new, like try to juggle, learn how to juggle, learn a new skill that you're guaranteed to fail at. Because oftentimes when you're dealing with perfectionism, you limit yourself to those things that you think you can do well, right? Or it's going to be like a quick learning curve, like, oh yeah, I'm going to get it quickly, and then I'm going to feel like I can do it. But when you consciously introduce yourself to something that's difficult, you're basically like desensitizing yourself in a small way to that process of failure. And it's like, oh, I can fail over and over and over again. I can eventually get better at this. And the goal doesn't have to be to get really good at it. The goal can just be, I can get through failure and be fine, and I can
Mm.
persist. So I know it's easy to say that. It's hard to actually implement that, particularly when the perfectionism has to do with some really important area of your life that, you have to unpack a lot of stuff for. Um, but the more that you can enjoy the things that you're doing that also have benefit and sort of get used to that idea that you can get through failure and persist and be stronger as a result. Any little thing you can do to help yourself with that is good.
That's great. And again, you could fail, but you'll be okay. Um, So somebody asked if you could give examples of how habits are serving something that perhaps we don't realize and need to be conscious of when making a change.
Hmm. Um, so an example of this um, might be, so a classic example is like if uh, a stressful, I'm in a stressful work environment, and the way that I connect with my coworkers is we go out for drinks later, right? And over time, I start drinking too much because this is
Mm,
how I deal with my stress, and this is how I manage, all the trauma of work or things like that. But also, this is my time to connect with coworkers. So I could develop an unhealthy drinking habit. At the same time, I can benefit from that social connection with my coworkers. I can bond with them. And so if I get to the point where I'm like, I need to change my drinking, my habits. I need to sort of change my relationship with alcohol, but I don't want to say goodbye to my coworkers, right? I still want to connect with them. Then finding a different way to connect, again, it's going to take effort and planning and time, and you're going to need support. Um, but that's one example of, seeing a habit that provides, some positive aspect, some positive benefit on top of something that's negative or really unhealthy. And so when you're able to identify those two things, you're better able to sort of appreciate the benefit and try to look for that somewhere else or get to that in a different way. Whereas if I really don't have a sense of the benefit of this habit that I've gotten into, and I just try to sort of change everything in pursuit of being healthier, being sober, then I might completely miss the fact that my social needs were being met in this habit. And now I'm not getting those needs met and I'm struggling, right? And then I might feel like, oh, I can't make this change because it's too hard and I don't even realize how hard it is or why it's so hard. So having that awareness of the benefits of an old habit or an unhealthy habit and like appreciating that, like that was something good that I was benefiting from. I just need to find that somewhere else, or I need to find a different way to get it.
mm.
That way I can sort of appreciate and continue to benefit from those things that are good, while at the same time consciously making a change from a habit that is unhealthy or hurting me.
Okay, that makes sense. Somebody asked, what is the 2-minute rule?
Yes. The 2-minute rule is basically a little, it's not a trick, but it's the idea that if you can do something in 2 minutes, you just try to do it right away. You don't postpone it. You don't put it off. You don't schedule it. You just say, like, I can do this in 2 minutes. And you
Mm,
can use the 2-minute rule to start a habit. And the way that you do that, my example that I used to use was back in the day when my joints worked. I would run. I try to run regularly. I hate running, which is why I stopped. And it's painful. Anyway, um, so I didn't naturally want to run. And so the way that I would do it is I'd be like, you know what? In 2 minutes, you can pretty much do most things. In 2 minutes, I can put on my running shoes, I can put on my running clothes, and I can walk outside. Right. And so that's what I was committed to doing. I want to put on my
mm,
running shoes, my running clothes, and walk outside. Right. And I can do that in 2 minutes. And if I want, I can stop there. Right. But the idea was, or the reality was, once I did that and walked outside, I was like, well, I'm outside. Might as well go for a run. And so that helped me get started. Right. Again,
mm,
it's this idea of thinking about tasks in a time limit or concrete um, structure so that they're accomplishable, right? They're achievable, right? So like going for a run seems like a lot of effort, which it is. And like, oh, do I really want to do that right now? No. But like, what can I do in 2 minutes? All right, I can do this little thing. And so whether that leads to something else or not is not the point. The point is if I can see something accomplishable in 2 minutes, I'm more likely to do it. And even if it is literally like, oh, for 2 minutes, I can do some push-ups. I don't know how many I can do in 2 minutes, but I can do some push-ups. And even if I
mm.
stop there, that's fine. And tomorrow I can do the same thing. For 2 minutes, I can do the thing. And so the 2-minute rule again is about starting. And so once I start, it's easier for me to maintain if it's achievable. And then once I've started, I can build. It's easier to build off of what I've already been doing. So that's the 2-minute rule in terms using it in terms of habit formation and maintenance.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to use that. Somebody else asked, what is a good time frame to set a goal, such as do it for 1 week or 1 month, which
That's
is
good.
somewhat similar,
Yeah.
I guess, if we're talking about the 2-minute rule.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of variation based on what the goal is, what's required, things like that. Um, so you could literally say my time frame is 2 minutes, right, today, just to see if I can do it, whatever the thing is. So your time frame could be one day. Your time frame could be a week or a month. Um, so you're going to have a better sense than me about what time frame is going to be helpful for you to start. And again, a time frame is really about starting and feeling like I've done it enough where I can now build off of it. And so if setting a goal to do something for a month seems like that's a lot, then either shortening the time period or changing the initial step of the goal, right? So if you know for yourself that once I do something for a month, then it's easier for me to maintain it based on my previous efforts, then making sure that that initial step is maintainable for a month, right? So don't set your goal to be, I'm going to work out for an hour today, or I'm going to like cut out sugar completely from my diet for 1 month. Um, make it maintainable. Um, and then, again, depending on what the goal is, again, sometimes a habit, if it has significant health consequences, you might need to be thinking in terms of like, I need to never do this again, right? Which is a long period of time. So then shifting your focus, which is one of the reasons why, like, one of the sort of key things about AA is one day at a time. So I'm just focusing on today,
Mm.
right? My goal might be sobriety forever, but right now I'm focused on today because I can deal with today. And that's what that's all about. It's like I'm focusing on the now. I'm not focusing on later. This is the day I'm dealing with. I can make it through a day. I can accomplish my goal for a day. So it's really about like what's going to work for you uh, in terms of that.
Excellent. We do have a slew of questions, so I'm going to combine. There are two that I think are similar. Suggestions for maintaining the new habit when you're in that period after the initial burst of enthusiasm has waned, and then again, rewards for maintaining the habits.
Hmm. Yeah. So maintaining that habit, um, yeah, it's like when the shine wears off, right? It's like this isn't exciting anymore. There's a benefit here, but I'm not naturally drawn to it. One thing to think about is to like inject novelty into something that you're benefiting from, but the shine has worn off, right? So if I'm trying to maintain, I keep going back to, exercise, but you can apply this to whatever. Um, if my exercise routine is just boring, it's like I'm doing the same things over and over again. It's like, oh, injecting novelty into it in some way, whether it's, changing what I'm doing, changing the location, changing the exercises, doing it while listening to music, listen to a podcast, watching something on Netflix while I'm working out on the floor in front of the TV. There's different ways to try to inject novelty into it. That's can be really helpful to benefit from that sustained habit, that maintenance. But when it's like, yeah, I'm just not into it anymore, but I don't want to give it up because there's this benefits. So you might have to be creative. This is a good time to ask other people what they do to get ideas, right? Like
Mm.
what's worked for you? Not that I'm going to emulate that, but just to get ideas about what other people have tried to inject novelty to make the maintenance phase sort of more doable.
Mm.
For some, it's rewards, and that can be really helpful in terms of rewards. Again, kind of going back to that initial idea of knowing yourself, like what is going to be rewarding for you? And is the reward in line with the habit you're trying to maintain, right? So if your reward is, I'm going to, the sort of ridiculous idea is, I'm going to not drink alcohol for 7 days, and then the eighth day I get to reward myself with alcohol. Well, obviously, that reward is in contradiction to what you're trying to do. So be thinking about rewards that will be motivating, be encouraging for you to maintain that habit that you're trying to persist on. Um, for others, um, again, it really depends on what's going to work for you. Some people go with punishment, right? So they remind themselves, like, what's going to happen if I stop this habit? Um, I'm not a fan of doing one or the other. If a mix is helpful to you, fine. Um, I would just be sort of aware of what effect that has on you. If reminding yourself of the potential consequence of not doing the habit is motivating and helping you maintain, fine. But if it starts to weigh you down, like you start to feel guilt or shame over not being perfect, and that's going to get you away from maintaining it, well, obviously that's not going to be the best strategy. So, um, yeah, in terms of rewards, I think that can be really motivating and helpful. Um, so yeah, be creative.
Again, love that answer. It's novelty. And if you are running and there's that shiny penny that wears off, maybe change your activity and do
Mhm.
something again, novelty, or combine it with something else. And sometimes listening to a audiobook or a podcast or music, again,
Mhm.
changing things up. So somebody asked, and this is a great question, they're finding it difficult to apply these steps and ideas with their habit, they label bad habit of smoking.
Mhm.
That's a
Yeah.
real tough habit to
Yeah, that's
break.
a good example too. Like, so I mentioned alcohol, but there are other habits that involve physical um, addiction, physical dependence, right? So when you stop that activity, you actually feel it. Like it's not just deciding to stop, um, watching TV or stop doing something. When you're dealing with a physical dependence, nicotine, alcohol, other substances as well, it's helpful to sort of take that into account in the change process, where it's not just about trying to make yourself do something, but it's also recognizing that there's going to be a physical experience and emotional experience to it. So for those of you who are trying to quit a habit like smoking, you're in good company. Was it Mark Twain who said like quitting smoking is easy? I've done it hundreds of times, right? So like quitting's easy, maintaining it is
Mm.
what's often really hard. And so I have heard, I've never had to quit smoking. I've never been a smoker, so I don't know firsthand like what that's like. Um, but I've heard other people using strategies where like bringing the future consequence into the present is helpful. So for some, I've heard stories of people like putting a picture of a loved one, like a child, in their, pack of cigarettes to remind themselves, like, oh, this is why I want to quit. I want to be around for my kid when they're older. Um, I've heard stories of um, one person uh, like making an arrangement with a friend that if they, broke their habit, I don't know if it was smoking or not, but I think it was, if they smoked again, they told their friend that they wanted them to make a donation to an organization that they hated in their name if they smoked again. So like every time they were presented with a choice of like, do I want to smoke right now?
Mm.
They had that feeling, that visceral feeling of like, oh, I don't want my money going to that organization. Right. So that's an example of taking a future consequence. The thing hasn't happened, but I'm taking it into the present moment. And I'm giving myself this experience of like, oh, when I'm thinking about doing the thing that I want to stop. Um, so again, that's just other people have tried those things. I think for a lot of other people, whenever you're trying to sort of stop a physical habit like that, having the support of other people, right? Doing it with other people, whether it's the same habit or something else, that can be helpful too. Um, But yeah, again, you're in good company. It's really hard to quit a habit. And again, sort of going back to that idea of like something beneficial um, as part of that bad habit, think about what else you get from smoking, right? So if it's like, oh, I get to take a break and walk outside to have a smoke break, right? Like, can you maintain that without the smoking? To make sure that
Mm,
you have that opportunity to walk outside and take a break from work. Um, is it connecting with friends, right? So how else are you going to do that? And just being aware of the different benefits that you do get from it.
mm. That's great. We are at the 1 o'clock mark. I know people are busy. Thank you so much, Shawn. This was really fantastic. I'm going to put some of those strategies into place. So, thank you again. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.